Welcome to He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. I'm Sal here with my co-host Monty. What's going on, man?
Go on, man. We made it. We made it to the quarterback episode.
The big one. For all of you who have been following us and interacting with us and supporting our pod, we thank you. Remember to like us, subscribe on YouTube, on Apple, Spotify, however you watch us. We appreciate everything. We don't need to go through all of that. As you guys usually know, we usually go through some Giant stuff and then we get into our prospect review based on position today. We're going to just cut to the chase. Not much to say about the Giants. We're 2-7. It's draft season, baby. So that's all I got to say about that. I guess we
Yep.
did well. I guess we know that Daniel Jones lost his season to the ACL tear. It's been well discussed, but all
Made
the
the
more reason.
made people look for this episode just a little bit more, Shout out Daniel Jones. Hope for a speedy recovery is him, but puts the people already asking for this episode, and that kind of put an emphasis on the need for quarterback.
Yep. So we've done all our other position groups, and we went methodically through all of them to build up to quarterbacks. And I promise you guys, this was not intended to correspond to Daniel Jones tearing his ACL. It was
Yeah, no,
not
we don't have
planned
a
at
crystal
all.
ball, guys.
It just kind of worked out that way because I remember when we were losing some games early, people were like, "Just move the quarterback episode up," and we were like, "No, no, no, we have a process." So the
Mhm.
process brought us here.
Yep.
So we're going to do things a little bit differently. As you guys know, this is a strong draft class, pretty much across the board. But we've been hinting at the idea that the strongest position of all is quarterback, both in terms of high end quality and depth.
Yeah, it
Uh,
really is.
this is a big class, guys. So I think we can make an argument there's somewhere between 15 and 20 draftable quarterbacks in this class, which is an
Yep.
insane number.
Depending on who
There's
declares.
yeah, and there are guys who may go back for sure, but as it stands, we're going to assume these guys are all declaring that are eligible.
Mm.
We're not going to be able to go through 15 people, but we do want to go through 10. So we're going to go through 10 prospects, but not all of them today. We're going to do our top 1 through 5 today. This is as per usual. Monty and I came up with our grading system, our own ranking system based on a lot of different factors. Consensus was a big part of it. We take Dane Brugler's assessment into account because he has his finger on the pulse of NFL draft scouts. We do our own film review. We For these particular players, we got our hands on as much coaches film as we could for the last 2 to 3 years. So for all 5 of these guys, we really spent hours and hours reviewing their tape and went through a lot of data. Monty did a lot of work crunching numbers, putting together stuff here for you guys. So we're going to try to put it all together and give you guys our best assessment. But um, I think with that, we should probably get started. What do you think, Monty?
Yep. I just want to add on to what you're saying there, Sal. We definitely, we've been putting our effort into all of these episodes, but this one we really wanted to make sure we got as much. I was reading up, and scouts say really to get an opinion, you want to watch at least like 3 games each from whoever you're doing it. Like, don't cheat it. So that's what we did. We did 3 games for every single one of these, all 22 coaches film. We learned a lot. Got a lot of stats, so we hope you guys enjoyed the episode. But
Right. Yeah. So before we go into the actual specific players, there are a couple of terms that we want to introduce you guys to that we look
definitely.
at, in addition to just sort of our subjective review of how these guys are performing on tape. We like to combine that tape review with data, and people criticize PFF, but they do crunch a lot of data, and over time, that volume of data becomes very useful. So there are a few stats that we want you guys to be aware of that we're going to be discussing with each player, with each quarterback specifically. So the first one is something called adjusted completion percentage. You guys all know what completion percentage is as a raw number. It's just completed passes divided by the total attempts. What adjusted completion percentage is an attempt to try to identify the actual accuracy of the quarterback when you take out certain confounders like drops, or the quarterback getting hit as he's throwing it, or um, spiking the football, things like that shouldn't
Throwaways,
count.
like that.
Throwaways, yeah, things that shouldn't necessarily count. That they don't because they don't really judge the accuracy of the quarterback in terms of purely throwing the ball. So to give you guys perspective, for the last I don't know how many years in the NFL, the average, the mean adjusted completion percentage of the top 25 quarterbacks is about 73.5% in a clean pocket, and it's 63% in under pressure situations. So
Mhm.
keep those numbers in mind. 73% for a clean pocket, 63% under pressure. And that's in the NFL. That's kind of what we're looking for as the mean. Um, I'm sorry, did you have to add something to that?
Nope. Yeah, and let's just accept those for the top 25 quarterbacks. So we'll go through and we'll try to mention those numbers as we're going through these. Um,
Yep. And there's four other stats that I'm going to be mentioning. So is Monty with these guys that we try to look at as direct comparisons to each other, player to player. One is something called big time throw rate, which is it's a little bit of a nebulous term, but it's trying
yeah.
to quantify the quarterbacks. The way it's defined on PFF is throws with a certain degree of difficulty thrown either into a tight window or down the field with a high degree of accuracy. Um, so basically, trying to measure quarterbacks making the kind of throw, what we call Sunday throws, essentially.
Mhm.
And let's think of it that way. So the percentage of throws that are sort of difficult, high difficulty throws that are Sunday throws, that's that's sort of what's being estimated in big time throw rate. The next term is something called turnover worthy throw rate. So these are passes that either do result in interceptions or should result in interceptions or fumbles from the
Yep.
quarterback's play. So they quantify all those. The third term is something called pressure to sack rate. This is a really important one. This is the amount of times that a quarterback sees pressure and actually has it result in a sack. By now, you guys already know that sacks are drive killers. Sacks are things that you covet as a defense, and you absolutely try to avoid under all costs as an offense. Quarterbacks who avoid sacks are gold, and you want to keep that pressure to sack rate down. You're looking for a number about 20% or so, or a little better, so somewhere in that territory. You don't want to be too much higher than that. Um,
Yep. And I know that's something a lot of, Giants fans have started to learn about this year because a lot of attention got put on Daniel Jones, and he had one of the highest pressure to sack rates in the NFL. So his was up around like 30-ish%. So
yeah,
I'm sure some people became familiar during the
and
last few weeks of it.
and
But
and I think Tyrod Taylor was somewhere around like 19%, which is more along the lines of like the mean of that
mhm,
number. Um, and the last number you guys are probably familiar with is time to throw, which is the measured average time that it takes the quarterback from snap to releasing the ball. Guys in college in general hold the ball a tick longer than guys in the NFL. So you got to take some of these numbers with a grain of salt, but you want to be around 3 seconds or less, ideally, at the collegiate level. Some guys will be higher, and there are explanations for that, but these are the kind of numbers we're looking for. So I don't think I mentioned the big time throw rate kind of numbers you're looking for. Uh, just to give you guys perspective, like double digit big time throw rates are extremely rare. I think there will only have been two or three players in NFL history who've hit like double digits. You're looking for somebody in the high single digits with the big time throw rate. Um,
yep.
Turnover worthy throw rate, you don't want to see a lot of passes result in the opportunity to turn the ball over. You're looking for 2-3% or less, ideally. So just keep those numbers in mind, and we'll go through them as we go through each player. So with all of that introductory stuff out of the way, why don't we introduce our personal number one? There's a lot of controversy now over who number one is,
There is.
um, and there's been a little bit of changing of the guard in terms of who is number one on a lot of lists. Why don't you introduce our number one, Monty?
Sure. So let's go ahead and start it off. And our number one here is Caleb Williams out of USC. That was the guy who seemed to be the consensus going into the year. The next player we talk about definitely has a case for number one. I think with a lot of these guys, it might be a 1A, 1B. You can make the argument. But for right now, we'll talk about Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams out of USC, 6'1, 215 pounds. He's a true junior. He was a five-star recruit. He was actually part of the Elite 11, which is a high school competition that had some of the best prospects every single year, and he won the Elite 11 competition. Some other guys we're talking about later were also in that competition. He originally went to Oklahoma, and he followed Lincoln Riley in his sophomore year over to USC, where he won the Heisman Trophy in 2022. Heisman Trophy winner, where he also won. He set a variety of USC single season passing records, set, yards, touchdowns, things along those lines, completions. To dive into those stats from 2022 a little bit, he had a 66.1 completion percentage, 4,537 passing yards, 42 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 382 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns, and he had 6 fumbles, which last year that was a pretty normal number. We'll talk a little bit more about the numbers over the rest of his career, but 6 fumbles is pretty standard for these quarterbacks. Then, to finish that off, he had a 91.8 PFF grade, a 90.1 passing grade, an 82.8 rushing grade, and he had an 85.5 PFF grade under pressure, which was number 1 in the entire country last year. Um, you know, Caleb Williams has not had the same success he had last year. Not that he's had a bad season by any means, but come on. All right, Sal, let's talk a little bit about this guy. Let's give him our thoughts about on Caleb Williams. Let's start us off.
Yeah, it's a tale of two seasons with Caleb, and I mean that not in any kind of extreme way, but
Yeah.
what he did as a true sophomore at USC was truly legendary, and it had people talking about Caleb as a generational prospect, truly a generational prospect who was drawing comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, um, and people were really coming into the season saying things like he might be the best prospect that we've seen in 20 years come into the NFL draft, and that we're talking now. If you remember, you're talking about guys like surpassing guys like Trevor Lawrence and Andrew Luck, who were viewed as generational prospects.
Yep.
And I think that was warranted based on his performance in the previous season and just everything he put on tape. And let's just say it's hard to live up to that. It's almost unsustainable to live up
Yeah.
to those kinds of lofty standards. The
It's
stats you just
unfair
read
to
off.
him.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember pushing back on this all summer, like,
I did as well.
yeah, like stop calling him generational. Just say he's a great prospect. See how he develops. Um, Caleb is a special prospect. I would say that very fairly because he possesses talent that I don't think anybody else in this class has. He has an upside that nobody in this class has, and there's just something special about the kid and the way he plays football. He's a fierce competitor. He's a winner. Um, and when he doesn't win, when he doesn't get his team over the hump, it absolutely kills him. And he has that kind of mentality where you want
Yep.
that in your leader, in your quarterback. He's a fierce competitor despite being supremely talented. I where a little bit of the luster came off this year, and we saw this in everybody saw it unfortunately in the Notre Dame game, which I'm sure we'll get into, but that was his worst game, and that was
Yeah,
I
that was
think
a
that was
bad
his
one.
that might have been his worst game ever, whether it was in college, high school, anything, where he had 4 turnover-worthy throws. He had, I think, 3 interceptions in that game. It was a mess, and he was under pressure. He had a hard time reading the defense against Notre Dame, and this was following up a week after a game against Arizona where USC won, but Arizona's defense gave him fits.
Yep.
When you look at the objective data in terms of Caleb Williams' performance last year versus this year, the top line numbers are really not terribly different. He's still he's a little bit under last year's pace for touchdowns and yards, but he's kind of right along that territory. He's still producing. He's producing a ton of points for his team. Where he has struggled is where his game has dramatically changed is his production under pressure. So you mentioned his 85.5 PFF grade under pressure last year, which is just bananas. It's insane. Um, and right now, I want his right now he's sitting at a PFF grade of 33 under
Yep.
pressure. So he went from 80 to 30, and that's improved over the last 3 games because he was sitting at about 28 a few weeks ago after that Notre Dame game. He's turned it back up a notch, and I'll get into that. But that's the big difference is that last year he was a magician. He would face pressure and he would turn every play that was pressure into like just eye-opening production. There was no weakness in his game. You couldn't pressure him without him burning you. It's insane to think about that. And it looked unsustainable. Unfortunately, it is unsustainable because this year with pressure he has struggled a lot more to produce, and that's where the luster has come off of it. But at the end of the day, he he's a very, very special player. His arm talent, I think, is tops in the class. He has the best arm, both in rhythm, off platform, with his base, with no base. He can do things with his arm that essentially nobody else in this class can, except for maybe one other guy who comes close. Um, he does go through his progressions very quickly. He's a full field reader. He does everything you want, and he has all the capability of doing everything you need to be a successful top end quarterback in the NFL. But where he does fail, in my opinion, and I think you're going to agree to this, we talked about this, is he doesn't take the layups. Where he makes his
Mhm.
own life difficult is he's a home run hitter, and he's looking to hit a home run pretty much on every snap. He's looking for the touchdown on every single play. He wants to actually drive that ball into the end zone constantly. And defenses are adjusting to that. And they're saying, all right, Caleb, we're going to take away the big stuff from you, and we want you to beat us underneath. And he's just not taking a lot of those layups. Although in the last few weeks he's begun to do that more, but that's been the big difference this year. But I'll stop there for a second. That's my kind of 20,000 foot view of Caleb Williams. What about you, Monty? What did you see, and what are your thoughts on Caleb?
Sure. So I'll start a little bit where we can talk about some of the negatives because it's so easy to talk about the positives with Caleb Williams because there's a lot of them. But I think you nailed a lot of it. I would say my number one issue with Caleb Williams, because this appeared last year and this year, unlike the pressure, is that he doesn't take those easy throws. And it's not when I say that, I'm not just talking about like he doesn't take a check down to the running back. Like he doesn't take like an 8-yard crosser with potential for more. Like he will hold on to the ball and try to make something big out of it. He constantly is passing up easy passes in his progression. And you know, my assumption from when I watch him, I think that he's just a home run hitter. He's no Mark Reynolds. Like he's
Swings for
trying
the
to swing
fences.
for the fences every time. He's trying to be the hero, and he needs to. I think there's a lot of coaching there to teach him to take more of the easy ones there, but part of it does worry me where I have no proof to say that he is seeing these in his progressions. For all I know, he could be totally missing these from his play style and what I know about him. When I do see him hit them, I assume he's just passing them up for the big play. That's what I've gathered from it. But there is a scary idea that like maybe he just is bad at processing like the low field. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think this is a good time to touch on some of those stats we had gotten into, because I think they tell the story with a little bit of context. So um, let's start with the adjusted completion percentage. We had mentioned that we want some, median in the NFL or mean in the NFL is about 73%. He's at 78%. So that's solid. I mean, he's up there. He's very accurate. I think that's fair. You see that on film. When he throws the ball, he's quite accurate. Um, his average depth of target is 9.1 yards. That's very good. His big time throw rate is 5.8%, which is not great for a home run hitter.
Yeah.
Like you want to see that number a little higher. It's not awful, but it's not great. But his turnover worthy play rate this year, 4%. That is high. That is
Hmm.
high. And you're going to hear that number. I think that might be the highest number we have on our top five. It's up there. Um,
Yeah.
his pressure to sack conversion rate is at 22.7%. You heard me say you want it around 20% or less, but around 20, it's not a big deal. Like, I mean, that's literally like 1 or 2 games of taking a couple of less sacks and that number will come down. But 22%, he's in that 20% range. That's not terrible. But here's the kicker. His average time to throw is 3.18 seconds, and that is the longest for any of these quarterbacks. And you mentioned it. Caleb holds on to the ball a long time. And some of that is by design. Some of that is the Lincoln Riley offense, where he's expected to hold on to the ball long enough for the big play to develop, and he does exactly what he needs to. Some of that is just Caleb just saying, I'm not taking that crosser. I'm waiting for the big play to develop, and I'm going to run around and make a play. I'm going to do my Superman stuff because this pressure is not going to beat me. And I think he plays with a lot of confidence that pressure is just not his problem. He's not worried about it. He's always looking to pass the ball, which is a good trait, but the question is, can you get away with that at the NFL level where guys are just that much better on defense, where they'll catch you, that they'll turn that into a sack. You're not going to be able that pressure to sack rate is going to go way up if you're holding on to the ball that long. I mean that's
Yeah.
Justin Fields territory, right? That number from last year. That's a bad number. And that's not just this year. He held on to the ball. He actually had a longer time to throw last year when he put up all those gaudy stats. The difference was he was holding on to the ball and he was hitting home runs. He was swinging for home runs and hitting them. This time he's not hitting as many home runs, and I think you're seeing that drop his stats. I will say this about in defense of Caleb, because it sounds like we're talking about all the things that are wrong with Caleb Williams and
Yeah.
where he's gone wrong. Like I said, this is a special talent. This kid has ability that you cannot teach. His ability to throw the ball, whether he's set with great mechanics, and he has really good mechanics throwing the ball from a good base. He has a tight throw. He has he has a good wind up. There's no extra movement there when he's sitting in the pocket, and when he's off platform, he doesn't need to steady himself to throw the ball. He can throw the ball pretty much from any angle, and you see him throw these like sidewinder throws like that are just insane from
It's
all sorts of angles. He does things that you just physically should not be able to do. And it's not just what he does with his arm; it's with his legs too. I mean, I don't remember if you mentioned it, but he was a running back at a very young age before he got converted to
Mhm.
quarterback by somebody. I think right before he got to high school. So he runs like a running back. I mean, there are guys who run like the Daniel Joneses of the world who, when they run, it's just like take the ball and it's power run and that's all he can do. Caleb Williams is a quarterback who's running around that has running back ability. So when he's scrambling, like if he wants to, he can evade tacklers, he can outrun guys, he can he can have juke moves. He can pretty much do anything. He can beat you with his legs, he can beat you with his arm. And like I said, he's a fierce competitor. What shows up on tape that's really frustrating, not about Caleb, but about what I'm watching, and I'm a big believer in this, is that I personally think he's not being properly coached up to his
Mhm.
ability by Lincoln Riley. And I know there are disagreements in the community about what Lincoln Riley is. I think that Lincoln Riley is a guy who people give a lot of credit to, but really what he's had is supremely talented kids play quarterback for him. And when I mean, I know you saw it too. Like a lot of this offense was the same. It felt like the same play over and over again when you watch all these games. It was shotgun zone read, and then two or three receivers running around, barely getting any separation, and Caleb being told, just figure it out. Like find somebody, do something. When you watch defenses react to Caleb on film, it's like the most uncanny thing I've ever seen. I've never seen 11 guys with all their eyes on just the quarterback.
Yeah.
Literally move to the right, move to the left. Whatever Caleb does, they're doing. And he manipulates that. Like his ability is incredible. Like if he shifts 2 steps to the right, the entire defense shifts with him. I saw that in every game film, like pretty much in every play. And he takes advantage of that. He'll pull guys to the right and then throw across his body and have this incredible throwing lane to his receiver. He'll create separation with his eyes and just his subtle movements. So that entire offense is based on Caleb Williams' innate ability to control the flow of the defense in front of him and to use his arm talent to beat people. You
Mhm.
got to wonder, with better coaching, where Caleb is taught, all right, you're a home run hitter. We don't want to take that away from you, but we're going to design some low to high reads for you too, where we're going to get you guys separate your receivers some separation in the short and intermediate area. You just hit them in stride. You let them do the work and take some of the load off, and we're going to help you out and not just depend on you doing everything. With better coaching, a scheme like the Kansas City type scheme, right, that we have
Yep.
right now with Mike Kafka, who's generating separation for our receivers. You got to wonder that if you can just take what Caleb Williams is and stick him in a system like that, you can absolutely unlock what I think could be like a top three quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
So
No, I
yeah, that,
totally
that's
agree with you.
yeah.
Um, I just want to, add on a little bit to I haven't done too much pros for him. So I really want to give it to him because like I said, he's my number one quarterback. He is a special, special player. And to what you were talking about, you said he runs these RPOs and he just gets so much focus on him that he can really just, you know, hand it off, bootleg, fake the pass, whatever it needs on that play and he can direct the defense seemingly how he wants to. And he runs it so well, and I honestly think if you brought him to the league and you started him out in some sort of, like, some RPOs and you started him out in, like, some, like, quick hitting type offense, he's so good at those quick hitters when you ask him to do it. It's incredible. It's just he has this ridiculous zip that he puts on his ball and these arm angles that he does to, like, put balls around players. I mean, that's where, like, a lot of these Mahomes comps come from, is he just
Yep.
has these ridiculous arm angles and zips it into these guys, and just so accurately, like, it seems undefendable at
Yeah.
times. Like, it's and, to what you're saying, I think Caleb Williams has legitimately, like you said, like, top 3 quarterback upside, and I don't think that's, like, this ridiculous thing to reach. But at the same time, I do think that there's coaches who can mess Caleb up. I think that's a difference where people were talking about Caleb Williams as a generational prospect. In my opinion, a generational prospect is somebody who's situation proof. And I don't see that with Caleb Williams. I see Caleb Williams, you know, people gave him the Mahomes comps. I mean, I might be able to see it in, like, some Texas Tech sense, but not MVP, NFL Patrick Mahomes. Like some a guy who still needs a lot of work but has all the upside in the world. And I think he's not to downplay where Caleb Williams is at. He's a very advanced player. He just has some stuff he does that gets him into trouble. But he's so good at what he does, it doesn't matter, and it really hasn't led to anybody having to fix it for him. And when he gets to the league, that will change. But, you know, talking about the New York Giants right now, who very likely have a chance to get like a top 2 pick in this draft, um, Caleb Williams would be a fantastic fit with Brian Dable, and if Mike Kafka's still here, I think Mike Kafka would be the perfect offensive coordinator to help groom Caleb Williams. I know people have issues with his play calling and things along those lines, but whether you think that or not, I think at worst, he still continues to struggle as a play caller. Brian Dable takes it over, and you say, focus on developing this kid because he had such a when he got hired by Kansas City, they brought him in as like, hey, you're going to work on Patrick Mahomes and get him running. And I could see him doing that type of thing here. He's and he can get there, man. He This is a really talented kid. One thing I wanted to the running. I love him as a runner. You mentioned that he's just so patient. He's so crafty. He doesn't do anything stupid when he runs either. He's just finding open holes and getting more yards and getting out of bounds or whatever. It's not like stupid running back shit. It's just like great vision and great patience. He's so good at it. Um yeah, man. He's QB1. He's deadly at like the deep center of the field. He kills it up there. Um Speaking of that, we can go in a little bit to where he succeeds on the field, but before we touch on some of that stuff, do you have anything else to say about anything else outside of that?
The only thing I'll say is I think it's worth noting that while people are a little down on Caleb because of a few games in between, this season where it kind of topped off with the Notre Dame performance, um, I kind of stay up and watch him every week. That late Pac-12 game is always a good one to watch when everybody else is asleep in the house. I've noticed the last few weeks, and I think the data backs this up, that I think he took a punch to the face. He took right. He got
Yeah.
punched where he felt invincible, and then all of a sudden he looked very very vulnerable, and he has responded. And the way he has responded is he's actually taking more of those checkdowns. He's taking like not checkdowns, but he's taking the easy stuff, the layups. He's reading defenses better on his own, and he's being far more efficient with the ball. Um, and I think this is something that if you see him do more of this as the season goes on, I think you will you're watching him evolve into a more complete quarterback, and maybe he needed that period of adversity in the middle of his junior year to kind of reorient him mentally to do these things. I think he's making a concerted effort to be a more complete passer, a more complete quarterback, So I do think he's already responding because he's such a remarkable talent, and then he's taking the home run shots when they're there. And when he takes
Yep.
them, boy is he hitting them. He's phenomenal. For whoever who didn't watch the Washington USC game, I mean, it was just a delight to watch that game in terms of quarterback play. And what Caleb did was nothing short of remarkable in that game, even though USC lost because they have a terrible defense. Um, before you get into numbers, I'll say this: if you put Caleb Williams on the Giants with our coaching staff, as you alluded to, and they can scheme some easy throws for him to get him going and tap into that talent. This is the kind of coaching situation you want to see the kid land in. This is exactly it. Like our current coaching staff, as constituted, is perfect for Caleb Williams, and I really do think if he came to the Giants, we would watch something very special for a long time. I firmly believe that. And that's why he's QB1 to me. But
Yeah.
I know you want. Why don't you go into some of the data because you did some good work here.
Yeah, so and I agree with you. He's elite talent. Just few things that need to get cleaned up by a good coach. And we have good coaches. And to what you were saying, you can look over to the right here, grades by game. Exactly what you were saying. See here, he had that little skirt there with the 61.4 against Arizona and 56.4 against Notre Dame. I guess for audio listeners they can't see it, but that was everything's
That's
in
it.
the green and the blue outside of those. So
Right. And you see like
um
this the yellow is the bad stuff, put it that way. And as it's going chronologically downward on the bar on that chart. So you see he responded. He responded with much better performances after those down periods.
yep. So let's go in a little bit to where you succeed in the field. So I'll try to lay it out for audio listeners because we have a graph here on it. But Caleb Williams has had a ton of success going deep this year. And I think that shows when you look at this graph. Right now, in passes 20 plus, he has a 93.2 PFF grade. You can see right here in the deep center, he right now is 15 for 17, 676 yards, and 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions.
It's
It's
insane.
as good as you possibly can be in the deep center. He is absolutely ripping teams apart there.
That should be
Um,
like 50% or less. That's what that should be. A deep
yep,
center should be a 50% or less completion percentage. He's 15 of 17. What is it? 604 yards you said?
676.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, and then on the outside left, also a ton of success. Obviously, the completion percentage is closer. He is 10 for 20 for 316 yards and 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So just absolutely shredding apart. But he has had a little bit of struggles on the outside right. Interesting. Nothing too much to worry about, but he's 3 for 16, 2 TDs, 1 interception. So like that is the side that he's struggles to. Interesting enough, but I don't want to dive too much into each part of these fields, but the deep is really want to touch on. But he's also the next successful thing is short. 0 to 9 yards is where he's also seen a ton of success. Where most of his passes are. He has an 89.2 overall passing grade in that area. You can see he's 57 for 73 in the middle. There were 601 yards and 7 touchdowns and no picks. He has no interceptions anywhere in that short area. He has a completion percentage of 79.6 in that short area. For the deep, for the record, he was 52.8. So again, over that 50% mark. Very good. The medium, he has a 61% completion percentage. Medium's 10 to 19 with a 75.7 passer rating. And then behind the line of scrimmage, he's in a 94.4 completion percentage, which is as expected for those type of passes with 71.9. So he's the only place he's really struggled here at all is kind of in the medium 10 to 19. He has 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in that area. His 18 big time throws in that 20 plus area with only 2 in the medium. He's is 8.1% turnover rate in the medium and a 5.8 on the deep. So, he's definitely really taking advantage of those deep passes this year. Want to just go in a little bit of that for each one of these guys, but You have anything else before we go on our next guy?
I know we spent a decent amount of time on Caleb, but it's worth it for Caleb.
Could have spent more, to be honest.
We really, yeah, we could do an entire Caleb pod, to be honest. Um, here's the bottom
Probably
line.
will at some point.
Hopefully, we will do several Caleb pods. The time to throw and all these things that we're looking at that we're kind of criticizing him on a little bit. This is stuff that I think that a good NFL coaching staff can work on, like we talked
I
about, like
agree.
drop back, see your read in the short and intermediate area, hit it. His arm talent is incredible. He's going to beat zone. He's going to beat coverage because he can just do that, and he has incredible vision. I think you can coach that down. I don't think this is an intrinsic problem, in my opinion. I think this is just a play style issue that might be a combination of coaching, a little bit of the desire on his end to always hit home runs, and maybe just his receivers not being given routes that help generate the kind of early separation that you need for him to throw that ball. I think in the NFL with the right system, a lot of the things that we're calling deficiencies or things that have to be improved upon can easily be fixed, and then what you've got is a guy who can beat you pretty much in every way possible. So QB1, and
Yeah.
if we're drafting number one, I've said this on Spaces, and we have the choice of anybody we want. 10 out of 10 times, I'm handing him that card. It says Caleb, 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 Caleb. That's how strongly I feel about this. So
Yeah.
that's
And
all I
we're
got on Caleb. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're being like nitpicky on this because you kind of have to be. He's such a good prospect, and when you got to come up with cons, you really got to look for everything bad you can find about his game to try to like make as honest an analysis as you can. He's not a 10 out of 10 prospect, but he is 9 to 10. He is right up there, elite category, elite prospect, best prospect since Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion, and he's right up there in the Joe Burrow, Cam Newton type level prospect, in my opinion. Like very, very elite prospect. Then in my opinion, this next guy that we're gonna talk about, I'll let you introduce him. I'm not quite 10 out of 10 times, but why don't you go into who it
And I
is?
don't I don't blame you because this guy's special himself. So our number two should be no surprise at this point to anybody is Drake May out of North Carolina. 6'4", 230 pounds, built like a freaking tight end playing quarterback. Another third year player. He's a redshirt sophomore. He redshirted his freshman year, his true freshman year at least. He was a 5-star recruit, another Elite 11 guy. Interestingly, his high school quarterback coach was Josh McCown, who's the current OC at Carolina with Bryce Young. He was a
Mm.
basketball player in high school. This guy comes from an insane sports family, and apparently he's the runt in the family. At six foot
Yeah.
four, 230 pounds, he was bullied by his older brothers, who were all like freak athletes. Well, I think two of them played at North Carolina. One of them, I'm forgetting what he did, but like they're all great athletes. He has a lot of, and he himself, by the way, was a great player, chose football, but he has a variety of records at UNC already. So let's go through his 2022 stats, and we'll start there. Um, his completion percentage was 66.2, 4,321 passing yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 698 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground, 7 fumbles. He had a 91.5 overall PFF grade, 90.8 passing grade, 74.8 rushing grade, a 65 PFF grade under pressure, which was number 15 in the country. Caleb was at like 80 something, and he was number one last year. And his adjusted completion percentage under pressure was 61.5%. So it's a little less than the NFL mean, but this is again essentially as a redshirt freshman. Um, he had a 63.6% adjusted completion percentage under pressure in 2023, so it's improved a little bit. So it's really hit the NFL mean. Um, Statistically, this guy, he checks all the boxes. When you watch him on film, he's pretty much as close to a perfect prospect as you get, other than the fact that he has Caleb Williams sitting in front of him in the
Yeah.
draft class. So why don't you take it from there? And I'm going to step over there for 1 second. I'll be right back. But once you get going, I
Yeah.
gotta do something real quick.
No worries. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about Drake May here. I am a big fan of Drake May, and I truly look at this as a 1A and 1B in this draft. I don't think that this is a second place prize or anything like that. I think I could very much see a team taking Drake Maye over Caleb Williams, and I personally wouldn't blame them as much as I do have Caleb Williams ahead of Drake Maye. He is the prototype, man. He is the prototype what you look for from a size and arm talent. He is the Justin Herberts of the world. He's exactly what you want. When I watch him, I see so much Justin Herbert to his game. I see so much Josh Allen to his game. And those guys had a lot of flaws in college. And I'm not saying that Drake Maye doesn't have flaws. We will get into it. He does, but he feels the most polished out of those types of guys since, like
Yeah.
I think he has better arm talent than Trevor Lawrence. He's got maybe Andrew Luck is a more comparable guy. The arm talent in size is crazy. He just has everything you want as far as arm talent. He can put the ball anywhere on the field. He has so much zip, which I think is, the important thing when you're looking at these quarterbacks. It's awesome if you can throw a ball 80 yards, and he may or may not be able to do that. It's more important with the type of velocity these balls are coming in with. He has A plus velocity. The ball looks different coming off of Drake May's hands. He it's just effortless. He can be rolling out and the ball comes just as hard even when he can't set his feet. He just generates so much power from his upper body. He can absolutely thread needles when he's putting these passes down the field. He doesn't get enough credit for some of these crazy arm angles that he puts out there because he's not Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams puts out these crazy arm angles like 5 times a game. You might get once or twice a game out of Drake Maye, but it's more than you see it with most quarterbacks. It's crazy what he can put out there. And his ability as a runner is insane. He's not a guy who looks to run, but he ends up running a lot because he's just so good at it. He's so athletic and he's so phys- physical. He's so big. He's so strong that when defenders hit him, they just tend to bounce off him. Like they can't really get this guy, at least at a college level. So he's always seems to be rolling out when he can't find something and getting yards where he can get it. And he's very athletic. He is everything you look for in a quarterback from his positives. I'll let you jump in, Sal, a little bit, and then we can dive in some of the cons on him.
Yeah, he's a big dummy. I love it.
Big
He's
dummy.
he's he's a big dummy. He's Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. He fits the prototype, and I say that in the kindest way. There are some differences between his game and Caleb's, which I think are important to point out. Let's just say that these guys they're cut they're cut above everybody else in the class, and really everybody else for several years in terms of prospect status. Um, but where Caleb succeeds, basically, you know, hitting home runs in the most improbable scenarios and working off script and running around, and when he runs, he beats guys by being elusive, like a scat back almost.
Yep.
The difference with Drake May is he is a better anticipatory thrower. So he's better. He's fundamentally a pocket passer. He can run. He can throw the ball on the move, but fundamentally Drake May is a pocket passer. He's a drop back,
Yep.
hit your back foot and sling the ball kind of passer. The difference is he has the freakish athletic talent that he could do more, that he can actually run and move around and use the full field. But he's not as good as Caleb Williams when he's actually on the run in terms of being a passer. Caleb can run and like on a dime, like with no base, with nothing, with no control, seemingly throw like perfect passes down the field. Whereas Drake May is his accuracy, his velocity, all those things like you just mentioned as being plus traits, they really take a big notch down when he's trying to do this on the move. So he's still really good. He's just not elite anymore when he does that. So I don't think fundamentally this is a guy that is a running quarterback. I think he's more Justin Herbert than he is Josh Allen, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Because Justin Herbert's a guy who can run and he can throw a little bit on the run, but fundamentally he's a pocket passer who can use his legs when need be. And I think that describes Drake May. And he's not an elusive runner by any means, but he's like the dude's a tight end. Like when
Yeah.
he's in motion, like dudes are just falling off him. It's ridiculous to watch. He doesn't look fast. Before you know it, he gains like 20 yards on a run because they're missed tackles. Guys are trying to take him down. He just doesn't go down.
Yeah, I'll
And
say
that
one thing
yeah,
with the
but
with the Herbert Allen like comps there. Like you're right, he's not Allen in the sense he's not like looking to run, and he's not like that's not a huge part of his game. But when he gets running, he's so Josh Allen like the way he runs and
when
his
he's moving,
agility.
yeah,
Once he
yeah, he
gets past the line of scrimmage.
yeah, he's a juggernaut when he starts
Yeah.
moving. But he's not like unlike Caleb, who's running to try to create a passing lane for himself. When he's running, he may throw the ball, but he's perfectly comfortable just tucking and becoming like a fullback or a tight
Yep.
end, like knocking people over like Josh Allen. And so that's really the fundamental differences between the two guys. But let's go through some of his numbers because they're really impressive. So
Yeah.
we're adjusted completion percentage this year so far 77.2%, insanely high. Caleb was at 78%, also insanely high. Average depth of target 10.9 yards, outstanding, 11th best in FBS. His big time throw rate 7.7%, so that's getting closer to where we want it to be, third best in college football. His turnover worthy play rate 1.5%, so way more big time throws than turnover worthy plays. um, his pressure to sack conversion rate 21.4%, so just hovering a little bit above that 20% mark. Again, I'm not going to go crazy about guys who are a little bit above that mark because these are all home run hitting prospects who are going to take a few more sacks because they're looking for that home run. But he's fine there. And his time to throw is 2.77 seconds. Remember, Caleb's at 3.12, I think. And he's at 2.77. So this is more in line with an NFL time to throw, where he gets the ball out before most teams have a chance to get him to the ground with a sack. So the data loves him. But his PFF grade, as you mentioned, is very impressive. He's sitting at a 91.2 overall grade, but his grade drops substantially under pressure as well. So he's not in the 30s like Caleb was this year, but he's 51.1, which isn't great. So again, there are some negatives to his game too, right? And I think you have to realize that neither of these guys is a perfect prospect. They both need coaching. You mentioned that he threads the needle really well on throws, and he has incredible accuracy. The ball pops off his hand. He throws his anticipation, especially down the middle of the field. We mentioned his favorite target in the tight end episode, Bryson Nesbitt, who he
Yep.
just loves finding on seam routes and over the middle, also in all sorts of combinations. And he's in zone through like double, triple coverage. He threads the needle perfectly through those zones and hits hole shots like an absolute technical master with this guy. Where he struggles, I would say, is there are times where he will try to throw that ball too perfectly, where he sees that triple coverage, that tight zone coverage over the middle, and he thinks he's going to beat it, and he'll throw turnover worthy plays doing that. Now he's cleaned that up this year, but he did a lot of that last year. But there's still a little element of that in his game. Um, Conversely, when he's outside the numbers, this is what's puzzling. He's very aggressive, between the hash marks. But when he's throwing the ball outside the numbers, you see one-on-ones with him. And I know we discussed this, where
Yep.
he should just trust his arm. Like he will not throw that. He won't pull the trigger on some of these one-on-ones down the field where like he can put the ball in a perfect spot, and a DB is not going to be able to keep up with it if he just throws those perfect back shoulders. He's got his receiver, with maybe a yard or two of separation. He's got the DB stacked. He's got to release the ball and he's got to trust his arm. And he doesn't take those throws enough, I think, for a guy as talented as he is. I
Yep.
think he's somewhat overly aggressive over the middle, and he's a little bit too shy outside the numbers on the deep ball, especially. But when he does throw it, he throws a beautiful deep ball. I mean, the guy he's picturesque in the way he does it. Last negative I would point out, and I think this goes to why I feel like he's not a great off-platform passer, like compared to Caleb, is his mechanics, while really outstanding in true drop back passes, they tend to fall apart a little bit when he's in motion. Like you watch him and
Yeah.
he doesn't know how to set his feet properly, and maybe his arm angle's not right. Is this coachable? I think it is. I think it's easily coachable with the right coaches. Like a guy like Dable, I think it'd really help him. But those are just minor criticisms of an outstanding prospect. But I'm going to throw it back to you on what other thoughts you have on Drake May.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing you were mentioning was that he doesn't trust his arm, and I see that sometimes. I'm with you. I see that outside the numbers. I'll even occasionally see it just like running up the seam somewhat inside the numbers. Like he just the ball will be there and he'll hold it sometimes. I'm like, why are you holding that? Like everyone knows you can make that throw, and he just doesn't. Like sometimes he just randomly doesn't trust his ability to as a passer, and that's confusing. With Caleb, we were kind of talking about how he doesn't take like the easy throws or the checkdowns. That's not an issue with Drake May, but there will be like passes that, yeah, not every quarterback can make, but he could make most of the time, and he doesn't throw them, and then he gets sacked. It's like why'd you hold on to that ball? Like you like that's not getting picked off from you. Like it's either gonna be completed or it's not, and he doesn't take it. It's weird because when he messes up, it's hard for me to point out how he can fix his mistakes sometimes. You mentioned there is some just like stupid stuff where he throws into triple coverage, and that's easy just to, try to coach up. But he just sometimes freaks out and makes a mistake, and it's not something that's consistent to his game, but it happens often. Like,
Yeah.
the one situation where I do see it happen a lot is he will when he's getting hit and he doesn't have a chance, he'll just try to like get rid of the ball. And sometimes there'll be an interception, sometimes there'll be a fumble, and sometimes you need to just learn when you got people on you, just go down with the ship. Like don't try making a stupid play. Conversely, I've also seen him make some awesome passes while getting hit. So it's just trying to mix between like, don't just throw the ball to throw the ball away. If you can make a great pass, great, but like don't just like get it out of your hands because that's how you can run into trouble. Um, but
He's gonna frustrate some fan bases at times. Like
oh,
he'll do
and
amazing things, and he'll do like just really really stupid things. Like
and I'll
it's
say I
just
don't think that's totally gonna go away. I think you see that with a guy like Josh Allen. Like that's
yeah
just part of who Josh Allen is. As great of a quarterback he is, he's gonna do stupid shit once in a while. And I think he'll have some of that. He does a lot of that out of structure. He'll just make a stupid play out of structure. You'll run into that with him, I think. Uh what else? One thing I noticed, I don't know, we didn't talk about it, I don't know if you saw this. He does a weird pump fake a lot. I'll see him running right before he does a big throw. He'll like do this and then he'll throw like he's not even trying to like it's almost like a false like throw. Have you noticed that? Like
yeah, and it's not hard to see that he's doing it, and he's about to run as soon as he does that.
he,
So he has some
or
strange.
rip it.
Yeah, he has some very strange tendencies that
Yeah.
I think that that a good defensive coordinator is going to pick up on and train his players on
It
to
just
know
happened
how to react.
a weird consistent amount of times, and it doesn't look like he's necessarily trying to like trick anybody. He's just kind of just like a something he goes back to. Um Trying to see what else I had here for his cons. I had a couple more things. One I wrote was he's a big dummy runner. Like I said, he's like very Josh Allen like when he does it. He'll like try to like hurdle dive over people and just get like helicopter hit. He'll fumble when he's trying to like do some crazy shit running. Like he knows how big and athletic he is, and he just does some crazy stupid shit. And sometimes it works, and sometimes he just ends up fumbling the ball or getting taking a hit you shouldn't take and things like that. Um, Very Josh Allen like to me. That's what makes me think of him is his run when he runs, for better or for worse, I think of it. Uh, then the other thing I had actually I had two more things. One, I don't think he throws the ball away enough. He'll like get outside the pocket. There'll be nothing there, and he'll either try forcing a pass or he'll take a sack. I don't see him often enough. Just be like, I'm outside the pocket, throw it away. Who cares? Live to see another day. He needs to get coached up, do that a little bit more. And one other thing, we talked about this a little bit, and some quarterbacks are like this. Herbert and Allen have a little bit to this too. There's just not a ton of touch, not a ton of arc to like his deep balls. He just puts fucking cold ropes all the way down the field, and like he doesn't. and I see them get like batted down occasionally. And he doesn't really lay them up like other guys do. Sometimes a
Yeah.
really good thing, but other times it's like I wish he had that in his toolbox. You know what I mean?
Well, just the fact that he can make some of those throws is it's like when you're watching Josh Allen on like these Sunday night games where he's throwing these frozen ropes just like barely off the ground, flying 50 yards. It's like
Yeah.
he has that kind of innate ability, and I think he trusts it, maybe to his detriment. I don't
Yep.
think there's a lot more to say about this guy other than he fits the prototype of like a if you want a larger quarterback, basically a big, tall guy who's strong and built like a tight end almost, who can take a punishing beating when he's running the ball and not necessarily be somebody you're worried about getting hurt, although those guys get hurt too, um, with immense arm talent, freakish arm talent. I really think that he is a almost a perfect hybrid of Justin Herbert and Josh Allen. He really is. Like he has the throwing ability of Justin Herbert, and he has that sort of physical running mentality of Josh Allen. And I think that's
Yep.
where you see the combination between the two these guys. And he's the big dummy runner that Josh Allen is. He really
Yep.
like just drop your head and blow through people, whatever happens. He needs coaching, like you said, he's gonna make frustrating mistakes, and I think you may see you may see it show up in like inopportune spots. The interception he threw, for those who remember last year in the bowl game against Oregon, was just this is a horrible interception, like in the end zone. I think it was to Christian Gonzalez, if I'm not mistaken. But it was awful. Like it was like he threw it right at him, and he'll do things like that. You're like, what the hell are you doing? Like you're so much better than this. And some of that stuff just it's going to require like hand holding and coaching and development, but talent wise he's right up there. QB2 for me. Wouldn't be shocked, like you said, if he's QB1. Not at all. I think some people like Brugler already moved him ahead of Caleb to QB1,
Yep.
and I think a lot of NFL scouts are going to view him that way, probably because of his frame and probably because he's putting together a more sound second year campaign than Caleb is in terms of just consistency. um, I should mention, while Caleb was, what was he? He's listed 6'2", 220, I think, or 6'2", 215, something like that. Um, he's built in a very sturdy way.
1 2 15.
6'1", 215. He's a very sturdy 6'1", 215. Like when you look at him, like
Yeah.
he's not somebody that looks like he's rail thin like a Bryce Young or something. I mean, Caleb is a strong dude, and he actually can, I think, have the frame to handle NFL contact. And obviously the same is true for Drake May. These guys are strong, like filled out frames, muscular guys, uh, big arm talent, incredible running ability, albeit a little bit different from each other. That's kind of it. I mean, in my opinion, these guys are going 1 and 2. Is Drake May a giant? 100%. I can see Drake May being a giant. I think
Oh,
he
yeah. I
fits
think
the.
he fits what we look for with
Yeah,
Dable and Shane.
yeah. As much as I personally have a slight preference for Caleb, like I would be thrilled if we got Drake May because he fits what Dable can develop, and I think that he would be great in this kind of system where we're running a lot of RPO zone reads,
Yep.
play action, and using the quarterback design runs, which is where he really excels. He's not a scrambler to runner; he's more of a design runner, and I think he would do really well in that kind of system. Imagine like a lot of what they did with Daniel Jones, except a guy who's a full field processor and with far better arm talent and anticipatory throwing ability. That's just that's a Pro Bowler, right?
Yep.
That's a high level, high caliber quarterback. Another guy who I think if he hits his potential, top 3 to 5 quarterback in the NFL potential.
Yep. Agreed. Yep. I think he's right up there if he hits his potential. Um, we go into a few more stats before we go to the next guy. Does that sound good?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. So, couple negative ones before we get into the into some of this passing depth stuff. Uh, One mentioned, something. The two areas that I've noticed May had struggles analytically. His pressure grade was not great. 51.1 was his PFF grade under pressure. It's about average, but still not great. The other thing I read from Jordan Reed, May's only completing 42.2% of his passes against man coverage this year. The national average is 51.5. So he's been struggling against man. He's been obviously much more successful for zone coverage, but thought that was worth mentioning. Um, Now, as far as Drake May with his passing depth, much like Caleb Williams, he absolutely dominates the deep middle of the field. He's 19 for 25 for 727 yards and 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So both of those 6 touchdowns and 0 interception to that depth. Um, and like Caleb, 9 for 18, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions outside left. So 50%. Very good. They're both very successful in the same area, and they both struggled outside right, 3 for 18, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Um, Deep, Drake May had a 96.5 passer rating from PFF, and he had 1,143 passing yards, which is first in all of college football. Now, medium 10-9, an area that we saw some struggles from Caleb Williams. He has a 90.8 passer rating grade, so another elite grade in that area. He's completing 60.6% of his passes. He was 50.8 from deep. He's 60.6 at medium. At short, 0-9, he's completing 78.5 for 708 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then behind the line of scrimmage, 94.1, 68.5 with 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So really good at every level of it. He's had success. We can look to see outside the numbers. He's still had a good bit of success and at each level. So, wherever it is, he seems to be a good quarterback. Do you have any thoughts on any of these stats or?
Yeah, I think in summary, I mean, even though these numbers don't necessarily support it fully, but I think what the tape tends to show us is that we're uh, Caleb for Caleb to be a more complete, prospect and quarterback, he's got to take layups and he's got to just trust like his receivers getting open on the short and intermediate area, the easy stuff, and let them do the work for him because he does so much amazing stuff that's should be like impossible to do. For Drake May to get better, I think he's going to have to, even though these numbers from an efficiency standpoint are good, I really do think he's going to have to get better at trusting his arm and taking more shots down the field, especially outside the numbers. And even though his passing grade to the left is outstanding, his passing grade to the right is not. And I think that's sort of where we saw a lot of throw the ball, trust your arm
Mm,
talent. So
yep,
it's
I
interesting.
agree.
So that's kind of it. Just to sum them up, these guys with a little bit of coaching are top prospects, top quarterbacks in the NFL,
Both
for maybe
elite.
slightly different reasons. Elite, absolutely elite prospects, blue chippers all the way. Are
Yep.
are 1 and 2.
Yeah, they'll be
I
they'll be top 3 on everybody's big boards, and that's not just because they're quarterbacks. Like they
Yeah,
are that type of talent.
I have a hard time seeing them not go 1-2 in the draft. There's not a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
agree. I'm
scenarios
just
where
saying, just like when
yeah,
people rank them, they're gonna
yeah,
be top 3.
one probably 1 and 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you want to go into number 3 then?
Yep. So let's go to 3. That's it for our elite prospects. But there's a lot of damn good quarterbacks in
So,
this
so,
draft.
so this is the next category. So the top two are elite. We won't use the word generational. I think that gets thrown around too much, but elite. The next two guys, I would say, fall into the very very good prospect status. Who
Mm.
maybe borderline. They're not really elite, but they're bordering just underneath it. And I think these two guys in almost any other draft class are viewed as guys who are consensus candidates to be either 1 or 2 overall in the draft. Just to
Yeah,
give you
I
guys
think
perspective.
there's guys of this caliber who have gone in that area before.
Yep. Yep. So I think you got this. The next guy, right?
Yep.
Or is it me?
So
Yep.
number 3, we have Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado, 6'2", 215 pounds. He's a true junior. He was a 3-star recruit, and he was a transfer from Jackson State with it when his father, Deion Sanders, took the job at Colorado. I'm sure you guys all know about that. It's one of the biggest stories in college football. But yeah, Shedeur Sanders, the son of NFL great Deion Sanders, um, came from the FCS and is now playing the FBS and hasn't missed a beat. He's been fantastic this year. So far in I'll just go, but I'll give you some of his stats from 2022 for those who aren't familiar. So this was at the FCS level, but he completed 70.5 completion percentage, 3,752 passing yards, 40 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1,074 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns, 7 fumbles, 83.7 PFF grade, 83.7 passing grade, 58.9 running grade. So not as great of a runner. And then he had a 51.4 PFF grade under pressure. Why don't you tell me a little bit about some of your thoughts about Shedeur this year,
Yeah.
2023.
So there's a lot of projection here with Shedeur.
Yeah.
He's not the type of prototypical 5-star recruit type talent that the top two guys were. But it's hard to deny what he put on film the first maybe 3-4 weeks of this college football season. What he put on tape was about as good as any film any quarterback has put on this year. Um, Shedeur is not he's not a humongous guy. Like he's not the 6'4", behemoth that Drake May is. He doesn't, he's strong and he's filled out, but he doesn't look imposing on the field. He just looks like a regular guy out there. But his strength is the way he processes the game. I really firmly believe that when you watch him play on film, um, this guy is a full field reader. He's a quick processor of the game. And I think he understands quarterbacking and concepts that I think reflect the NFL bloodlines quite a bit here. Like he knows how to read DBs, he knows how to read safeties, he understands leverage. He has all of the cerebral tools to start putting it together, and he beats teams with that knowledge. In the short area, you see the ball just zips right when he throws that short to intermediate area. He throws absolute like laser beams, and he gets that ball out there quickly. With the deep ball, he has nice touch. I wouldn't say he possesses elite arm talent, because I think that he relies a lot on like lofted throws in the deep area, and
Yep.
he doesn't have the ability to throw those lasers like the top two guys do. But he wins. Now, he just finds a way to get things done. Now, he's not as accurate as those guys in the deep area. I think you'll get into some of those stats in the deep area, like where he struggles in terms of accuracy. But this is a guy that moves the football and he knows how to dissect defenses, and it shows up on tape where he just understands coverages, he understands leverage, he understands how to get his receivers the ball in position to make plays with the ball. He looks like a refined passer, far more refined than I think people thought he would be coming into the season. Could he use more seasoning, more time in college football? Maybe, maybe not. But I think today, Shedeur Sanders is a top 10 pick. That is my opinion. That if he declared right now, he'd be viewed as a top 10 pick. If he falls outside the top 10, it probably won't be by that much. And I think he's viewed as a guy that you can put into most NFL systems, and he's going to be a successful NFL starter. Now, will he be an all pro? I think that I don't know if he has that high end talent of that, but could he be like a top 10 NFL quarterback upside? I think so. I think the way he processes the game and the way he understands how to play football, and how he has good enough arm talent to kind of do everything he wants out there allows him that ability. And he's also a good runner. Like he's not a guy who looks to run, but when he needs to scramble, he scrambles out of trouble. He senses pressure. A couple of stats that I think we should always go through, right? Like I'll pull them up here. His adjusted completion percentage, again, this is very impressive, 79.6%. His depth of target was 8.1 yards, which is not great, but I think when you understand his supporting cast, that makes sense. Big time throw rate is 5.1%. Not humongous. It's come down a lot. It was a lot higher the first few weeks. I think as the competition got stiffer for Colorado, that number came down. His turnover worthy play rate is a very respectable 1.8%. His pressure to sack rate is 24.7%, which is on the high side. That's high. And I think if you watch Colorado games, you might understand that a little better. And his time to throw is 2.82 seconds. The context to add here is his team is nowhere near as talented as these other teams. I mean, he has Travis Hunter, but he doesn't have a whole heck of a lot else. He has zero offensive line. Like I mean, it's rough to watch some of his film, mainly because in my opinion, like his offensive line just rolls over, and he's got guys in his face constantly, and he's running for his life on every play. Like from that standpoint, he's ready to play for the Giants. Like
Yeah.
he's used to that, and he's used to creating from that. I would love to see what he could do with just a little bit more support because as much as like some of these are quarterback individual stats, you can't deny that some of this stuff is affected by the constant pressure of having like zero offensive line and receivers who cannot generate separation. He's got to do everything himself. So I think there's a little bit of that in this. And if I put Shedeur on even North Carolina, how much better do these numbers look? Right? I think probably substantially. So
Yep.
I want to throw it back to you. Get your thoughts on Shedeur.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Shador. To add some context to some stuff you talked about, like, yeah, let's say that big time throw rate, 5.1%. It's not that high, but this that offense throws the ball a lot, and that plays a little bit into the rate. If you just talk about how many big time throws he's made this year, he's fourth in the country.
Yep.
He's tied with Penix. Maye is actually first in the country on that, but he makes a lot of big plays for that team, but they put the ball in his hands a lot. And something you were mentioned, probably my favorite part about I've watched a lot of Colorado this year, and I like watching Shedeur Sanders play. And that dude deals with a lot of fucking pressure back there, man. I know, like, a lot of Giants fans have said, yeah, like, look at these pressures for Daniel Jones and Tyrod, but, like, look, not all pressures are created equal. And when you watch how this Giants offensive line plays, like, these pressures are multiple people in their face immediately. And you want to know a guy who's dealt with that, is Shedeur Sanders. And that's what makes me like Shedeur Sanders, is because he's played an extremely high level with that type of offensive line play. And you don't get that from these other guys. Like, these other guys have had really good situations for the most part. Caleb and Drake May probably had some of the worst out of the guys we're going to talk about in this, but they're still like above average. While Shedeur Sanders is just bottom of the NFL. I think he's the most sacked quarterback in, or not, or college football, but most bottom. He's the most sacked in college football, I believe. Uh, so it's interesting though, where I had to develop a lot of my opinions, kind of just watching him on Saturdays, because inside behind the curtains, we had got three all 22 tapes in Shedeur Sanders, but we only get one from Colorado. The other two are from Jackson State. So, and that game that we got was Oregon. Oregon was a bad game for Shedeur Sanders. Before I go a little bit, let me just give you some of my positives, and we can get into some cons. So, what I liked about him, outside of just how well he handled these pressure, um, I said he had a really quick, compounded release. Very technically sound. I mean, he works with Tom Brady, who has the best release we've ever seen. It's not surprising that he has been able to create a good one for himself. Ridiculously good short game zip. In the short game, his zip is really, really good. As you mentioned, he puts more arc on kind of deeper passes, so he's not like a rope down the field type guy. It's a different type of throw, which isn't a bad thing. A lot of players have that to their game. There's only a few that can throw with that type of velocity 60 yards down the field. Shedeur is not one of them, and that's okay. Um, he he's deadly when he's on rhythm. When the protection's there for him, and he starts getting completions, he is just absolutely deadly when he's on rhythm. So there's that. He has really good escapability. He's not Caleb Williams, but he's good in his own right. He's a good player at escaping and making plays. He's just not elite like a Caleb is. And the last thing I had on him, when it he they play a lot of close games there at Colorado. They do not just pull away from people. They're not a good enough team. And when they're in situations where they need Shedeur Sanders to make a play, he makes a play. He's been stepping up all year in those situations and making a play. Um, I wanted to get into a little bit though with the negatives here. I mentioned that Oregon game, and I'll say that was the worst tape I watched of any
Yeah.
of these people, and I tried to find bad tape for like I the lowest PFF grade I could find of tape that was available to me for each player. I made sure to watch it, and he was not good, man. This was some of the notes I had on it. He would take his first read way too often, even if it was just like a deep shot 50-50, and I would watch some guy in his next read come wide open. If he just waited another second, he could have thrown it there. He was late on a lot of reads. There would be a guy who was open, and by the time he got to him, they weren't open, and he tried throwing it anyway. Um, in that game, he was short on so many
My
passes.
God, the
He was,
bounce
he,
passes, the
yeah,
bounce passes.
he was putting him in the middle of the field, just bouncing him into him. He was even on his 50-50 throws. The guys were having to fight to come back for the ball. And then the other thing I had is that he was not like he was trying to play that Caleb Williams type escapability against Oregon, and he wanted to have that in his bag, and he just doesn't have that type of elusiveness to handle heavy pressure like that. He's good; he can make a move or something there, but he just kept trying to make a play, and he's just like, "You're not that guy, pal. Like you can't do it with three guys in your face, man. You got to just put it to your check down. You got to stop trying to live the scene every day because he just kept getting killed. You didn't even have a shot with some of these. So that was a bad game. So what were some of your negatives that you came away from here?
Yeah, it was that game. I mean, like I said, his short area game is incredible in most games where he throws with incredible velocity. It's almost impossible to defend how fast that ball gets out of his hand into the receiver's hand in stride. That Oregon game, I don't know what was up with him that day. I mean, maybe it was the pressure that got to him. Maybe it was what Oregon threw at him, but he was just wild. He was throwing the ball like on the deep passes, like you said on the first read when he was taking those sideline shots. He was throwing the ball like 10 yards out of bounds. On the short passes, he was bouncing the ball like he was rattled. And I think sometimes you just got to throw away a game, honestly, and say,
Yep.
"Guy just had a bad day." Kind of like you got to throw away the Notre Dame game for Caleb. Just say, "Look, you want to learn from it. You don't want to ignore it, but at some point, it's like it's one game." Um, Here's what I'll say on Shedeur to close it out. While we don't know if he's going to declare or not, we're assuming he is until he
Yeah.
isn't. Um,
Until I hear it from his mouth, not his dad's.
right. If you want to comp, because I don't love doing comps because these guys are all unique, but we've been comping the other guys, right? Like the Mahomes comp, even a Mahomes slash Kyler Murray comp makes a lot of sense for a guy like Caleb, right? Guys, that's
Mhm.
similar play styles. Um, and then we mentioned Allen and Herbert for May. If you want to comp with Shedeur Sanders in the NFL today, it's Joe Burrow. Um,
Yeah.
it's a guy who plays basically under duress at all times, and he's just living in a forest fire at all times, and he's finding ways to succeed. And I
Plays
think
with a
that's the way.
chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, he does play with a chip on his shoulder, and if you look at Joe Burrow, like he doesn't have like the greatest arm in the NFL, but he's an incredible anticipatory thrower, and so is Shedeur. He doesn't. He reads zone well. He puts the ball in. He just has great ball placement. He puts the ball where his receivers can get it. He's not rattled by pressure. He's not rattled by a shitstorm all around him. And it's hard to quantify that in terms of value in the NFL.
Mm.
And that's why I love Shedeur Sanders. And I know you feel the same way. That's a skill. And I don't know if that's because of the NFL bloodlines or just who the kid is, but Joe Burrow's got it. And I think Shedeur Sanders has it too. And it wouldn't shock me if Shedeur Sanders, whenever he declares, whether it's this year or next year, wouldn't shock me if within a couple of years you're talking about him as one of the top few quarterbacks in the NFL because of that ability. Because in the NFL, it's always a shitstorm around you. And if you can live through that and succeed through that, you're going to be good. So that's what I got. I'll say this: I have to make my shout out because I should have done it earlier.
Yep.
Um, to my friends, to my crew in MLK space, we got that name. You don't want to know how we got that name. It's Jabri's fault. But the name is stuck. We've been following some of these prospects for a while now. So we all, they love Caleb and Shedeur. And so shout out to them because I know they're going to appreciate us giving Shedeur props here, which I don't think he necessarily gets from everybody at this level.
Yeah.
You know, and I really believe he's that good. And in my opinion, I know Deion Sanders will never see this, but in my opinion, Deion Sanders, Shedeur should declare. And here's my reason before we move on to number four. And I guess you want to go. I don't know if you want to go through the depth stuff, but if before you
Yeah.
do, Dion, you should let Shedeur declare because right now he has the possibility of being a top 10 pick. He does not have Caleb Williams' floor. If he comes back next year and he struggles, anything, injury, regression, anything at all, his stock could plummet back to day
Yep.
two, which is where he was when this season started. He's worked his way into first round consideration, and I'm willing to bet that barring some major change in how he plays by the end of the year, the advisory board is probably going to give him a first round grade and probably say that you're like a top 10 to 15 pick. Assuming he gets that, he should declare, and he should get to the NFL, and he should go with some good coaches, and he's ready to play. He's ready to survive in the jungle that is in the NFL right now. But I'll let you close it out with your data points on this guy.
Yeah, I agree. One last thing before I get into the data points, because I actually had a comp myself, and I definitely hear where you're coming from with the Joe Burrow, just how well he handles pressure. One guy I kept seeing when I watch him on Saturdays, I see a lot of Bryce Young to his game, a lot of Alabama Bryce Young with how poised Bryce Young was and how he always seemed to be calm, rolling out and making plays, and how accurate he was and how good he was into like that short to intermediate area, and he could make the deep passes even though he didn't have like the biggest arm in the world. I definitely see some Bryce Young to his game. That's the guy who's popped off the tape for me when I watched him. Uh
I can see that.
yeah.
I can
But
definitely see that.
so here's some numbers before I get in the depth. One is, I mentioned, is he has a 61.9 pressure grade, which is like, if we people who are watching, it's above like the 75th percentile line there. So it is like a top tier number. He was earlier in the season. He's had some stretches of some bad games recently. UCLA, Oregon State, Arizona State wasn't his best. Things along those lines. But first 5 games of the season, even with that Oregon game included, he was up in like the 70s for pressure grade, which is like 90th percentile, like really fucking good. So like he has handled pressure well. Even with his struggles, he's still up there, even if he's not like quite 90th percentile like he was before. Um, Now talking a little bit about where he succeeds on the field. I'll start right where I started with all the other guys, that deep center. He's also had a lot of success in that deep center, 217 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. 217 yards, a little bit lower though for 5 touchdowns. He only has 8 completions there out of 17. So he's under 50% in that deep center. And, talking about even with the adjusted completion percentage deep, he's at 43.8. But the interesting thing is that he has a 95.7 passer rating, PFF deep, and that's because he has no interceptions outside the numbers. He has 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, both to the right and left. Um, he has a total of 675 yards. So although his completion percentage isn't that great, he has 17 big time throws, 9 touchdowns, and 1 interception deep. So, not the most accurate, but very efficient when he connects out there and doesn't really make any mistakes. Talking the medium area, the 10 to 19, he has a 90.5 passer rating. He has 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and he has an adjusted completion percentage of 59.4. So he's under that 60 mark there. And then he is very good short to short area, as we talked about. 82.1 passer rating there. He has 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He has a 90.4 adjusted completion percentage within the 0 to 9 mark. He is ridiculously efficient in that area. And then behind the line of scrimmage, has a 71 passer rating PFF, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a 96.2 adjusted completion percentage. So, um, you know, kind of lines up with all that we talked about there, but definitely had a lot of success. But why don't we go into our next guy here? What do you think, Sal?
I'm ready.
All right.
We're down to our last two, but this next guy is in the same category as Shedeur in our mind. This is a projectable player. Um, so kind of a riser in this class, to be honest.
Yeah.
But number 4 is J.J. McCarthy from the University of Michigan. He's 6'3", listed at 202 pounds. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but he was 185 pounds last year. So he's put on some muscle. Third-year player, 4-star recruit, another Elite 11 guy, was a former hockey player. His 2022 numbers, 64.6 completion percentage, 2,719 passing yards, 22 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 306 rushing yards with 5 touchdowns, 9 fumbles, 77.7 PFF grade, 75.7 passing grade, 68.2 rushing grade, a 42 grade under pressure, 59.6 adjusted completion percentage under pressure. Remember, we want to be around 63%, and 73.9% adjusted completion percentage under pressure in 2023. Big jump there. But those are the basic data points. But there's a reason he came up to all the way to number 4, and it has to do with the player he was in 2022 and who he is now in 2023. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about JJ McCarthy, Monty?
Dude, I liked JJ McCarthy when I watched the tape. And I didn't think I'd like JJ McCarthy as much as I did. I've watched him a little bit this year. I watched him a lot last year. And the JJ McCarthy we saw last year is not the JJ McCarthy we're seeing this year. And he has been insanely good this year. We saved the numbers for. I just want to start out and go into a little bit of his 2023 numbers since we just went over 2022, just to give you an idea. He has an 82 adjusted completion percentage. He has an average depth of target of 10.6. He has a big time throw rate of 7.7%. He has a turnover worthy throw rate of 2.1. It's okay. He has a pressure to sack conversion rate of 16.7%. Um, and a average time to throw 2.88 seconds. He has been incredibly good, and he has a 75.1% passer grade under pressure, which is back into like the 99th percentile. He's like, I think he's number 2 in the country or something right now. When you watch JJ McCarthy play, man, it's something that we've said about every single Michigan player that we've reviewed so far, and he is well coached. It pops off the page with these guys, and it again goes with him. His footwork is just so good and it's so smooth. It's just he always looks like he's doing the right thing, and it looks so natural to him. Uh, he has really good pass tempo from what I noticed. He wants to win from the pocket. He has a lot of speed to not, but he wants to be a pocket passer, and he's very accurate, especially on those deep balls. When I watch him on deep balls, there's something that I was talking to you about where I was looking at how to evaluate quarterbacks, and I was looking at some guys from scouts, and they said there's different types of accuracies for guys, and there's guys who can hit a door, there's guys who can hit a doorknob, and there's guys who can hit a keyhole. And he might not be a keyhole guy in like the short to intermediate area, but on those deep routes, he is a keyhole type passer. Right? He tries these tight windows, and he's constantly putting them exactly where they need to be placed. When he gets them open, he puts them right on their body. His accuracy, his his fast processing, he's just fearless when he's attacking downfield. He feels pressure so well whenever it comes on. Whenever pressure comes, he is always sensing it and moving. I've noticed he's a really good anticipatory thrower. I constantly, as I'm watching this, I'm just pausing the screen and at the top of his drop back, and where right when guys are about to break, I'm just trying to like get an idea what he's looking for. And constantly I saw him preparing to throw before his wide receivers are making their break, and he's hitting them and hitting them with a tight window pass. He's great at manipulating the pocket. Uh, he's really good at a read option. He's deadly at times. He has this acceleration to his game where he can go 0 to 100 so fast, and he he just seems to be doing everything well, and he does everything that Michigan looks for him to do. He's kind of in a weird offense where, you know, you'll notice his numbers won't be as high as some other guys because, they are very run first. They've put that ball in his hands more this year than they did last year, but he runs play action, he runs read option, he runs everything out of that offense so well. There's really just my list went on and on and on of all the things I kept finding I liked about him. I was a huge fan, and I really didn't expect to like him this much. But JJ McCarthy's the real deal. I like him. What do you think about him?
He's projectable, man. This is why he's on our list where he is. I mean, he is. He kind of checks all the boxes of what you're looking for in a modern NFL quarterback. He's got the size, he's got the strength, he's got the arm talent, he's got the mobility, he has accuracy and anticipatory throwing. Um, if there's a knock on him, it's probably that he doesn't have quite the sample size
Yeah.
that the other guys have, and I think that like you mentioned, that's a byproduct of the machine offense, which is, it's a run heavy offense. They have two top tier running back prospects, and they have an offensive line built for the power game, and they run a ton of inside zone, and he feeds off of that as opposed to it being more of a passing based offense. But I think that if you watch Michigan football, more and more and more, it's shifting more towards a McCarthy based offense where they're using his arm. And he's responding. Now, the thing that jumps out on the tape when you watch him is this dude throws absolute freaking laser beams. I mean, he's all velocity when you watch him, and I mentioned that to you, like if they're everything comes at 100 miles an hour from this guy's hand. He has, and his mechanics are sound, right? I think you mentioned that he's got really good throwing mechanics. He's got a quick, compact delivery, generates velocity with good torque. There's not a lot of wasted movement in it, but he absolutely is slinging that thing as hard as he can. And if there's a knock, I saw a lot of missed throws outside the numbers because of that velocity, like where he would just throw wide of guys and just go. It was just too hot, and they couldn't get there on a lot of out routes. Um, Plenty of plays where there his drop numbers might have been a little bit high, but because of him, because he's throwing the ball, and I saw plays where his receivers, it's like trying to catch a hot potato, or and they're trying to
Yeah.
corral those things, and I think he's gonna have to tone it down a little bit. He's gonna have to realize that you need some touch on these throws. Like you don't have to throw everything 1,000 miles an hour. That's I think coachable. But at the end of the day, this is a guy who could really succeed in the NFL with the right system and coaching. They take advantage of his legs and his ability to create with his legs, take advantage of his anticipatory throwing and his arm talent. Does he have a Drake May arm? Does he have a Caleb Williams arm? No, obviously not. He's not at that caliber. But he's got the potential to be a fine NFL starting quarterback, like a top 10 to 15 quarterback. I think is very much within the realm of possibilities for him, of likely outcomes for him. In that range where you have guys like Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray,
Mhm.
those kinds of guys. He can absolutely be in that category, and he's got a ton of talent. It's just he needs more of a sample size, and he's going to declare and probably be an early pick in the first. But is he a good fit for the Giants? Is he a good fit for Brian Dable? I would say probably yes, because he has the mobility you need to function in RPO offense, and he has the ability to evade pressure. You mentioned the pressure to sack rate of 18%. It's actually the best number we have had so far. We'll get
Yeah.
to the next guy. But that's really good, 18% for a guy who's basically only in his second year starting. That shows quite a good ability to get out of trouble. He started the season with a time to throw of over 3 seconds. He's brought that down to 2.88 seconds. That's not easy to do. And he's actually putting together tape where he's getting the ball out quickly. So I like the trajectory of JJ McCarthy. I don't know if you could look at the body of work and say, yeah, that's a guy who should be top 10, but his trajectory is a top 10 player. And I think that's where he's going to land on draft day.
Sure. So, yes, a couple things I have kind of what you said. I definitely see what you're talking about with like outside of the numbers, he is absolutely firing him, and I feel like he feels like he needs to, but it's not always the case, especially on the shorter plays. But I do feel like he has good pass tempo, like, within the numbers. I feel like I
Hmm.
see him tempo the ball more within there. Um, and then, yeah, the sample size is small of what I would consider, I'm not calling him an elite quarterback, but elite, like, college quarterback play this year. It's small because it's really just been this year, but this is a 3-year starter. He's gotten better every single year. His if you look at his completion percentage, it's gone from 58.6 as a freshman, 64.1 as a sophomore. Now he's up to 75.7 as a junior. He's gotten better every single year. His yards per attempt is up to 10.4. He's really willing to take deep throws. I feel that he has really risen his floor this year. And I think although he is a projection to what, like, because he has a lot of those traits, I feel he could step in and be a very good quarterback from day one. Uh I I agree with you on he's probably a top 10 to top 15 quarterback. And there's not a lot of guys who project to be top five. We luckily in this draft do have two of those guys with, Drake May and Caleb Williams who project to be those type of quarterbacks. We'll see if they live up to it, but they have that type of upside. Uh, JJ McCarthy, don't get me wrong, though. I think, if you're looking at the quarterback talent in the NFC, JJ McCarthy has a type of upside to be the best quarterback in the NFC right now. I think he has that type
Hmm.
of upside. Um, Now that's also the great thing about, guys we talked about with Drake May and Caleb Williams because they could absolutely run the NFC if they came here because the gap between them and the next guy would be so large if they reach their ceiling. JJ McCarthy would be more aligned with those guys, but could be the best on any given year type of thing. I think he has that type of upside. Um, the way but he's played well under pressure. He plays really well with deep throws. The negatives I do have on him though, uh, he this dude is a lean guy, and when he gets hit, it it looks different when he gets hit. He looks like he gets hit hard. He gets
Looks,
laid out.
it looks like Devonte Smith and
Yeah,
And Xavier Worthy. Like there he goes flying.
it's got a lot of those vibes. I talked a little bit about how he's an anticipatory thrower and he has his willingness to try to make any like short throw. That's a great thing, but it can also get him into trouble because he's willing to make this read on a wide receiver about to break a route on something that's gonna be tight after it. And if the wide receiver doesn't run that perfectly, it can become a turnover worthy play, whether it gets picked off or not. The D back can get their hands on it. Um, I see him struggling at times to throw off balance. Other times he's really good at it, but sometimes I do see him struggle. Um, I watched that TCU game from last year, from the
Yeah,
playoffs, and
there were some bad plays there.
It's funny enough, though, he had a really weird game there. I mean, he threw 2 pick sixes in that game and fumbled the ball, and I still came away like, this guy had a good game. He really kept them in that game. He made some awesome plays, but there obviously are gonna be negatives that come away from that. There was a second interception in that he just totally missed a linebacker that was underneath on that, and he got take for a pick six. And then really what it hurt me on that one, what I bothered me the most wasn't the pick sixes or the fumbles, but at the end of the game, it just seems like nothing was going right for him. He choked at what it felt like. He was from dropping like the snap to just not making the plays when he needed to do it. He was so on despite some of those mistakes all game, and he was just off at the end when it really mattered and they had a chance to win it. So that bothered me that he came up so poor in the biggest moment. We'll see. He'll get another chance this year, I assume. We'll see how he shows up. But those are some of my notes on him.
I think you nailed it with most of those notes. I just wanted to add he's really great in play action. He's good. Yeah, I mean I think he's a good drop back passer too, but I think in play action he definitely feeds off of having Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards on his team. and he knows how to run that kind of offense. So again, I think if you think about where offenses are headed, right, to respond to the way the Fangio or hybrids of the Fangio system, where they're taking away explosive deep plays, the modern offenses I think that will find the most success are the ones that have a nice balance of a good running game with quarterbacks who can absolutely take advantage of play action and and draw safeties. He's very good at that. I think he's very adept. He's been living in a system that thrives off that. So if you brought him to the Giants, let's say you have Saquon Barkley here next year, or even if you don't, if you have a couple of other running backs who you're going to build a running game around, I think that's how you utilize JJ McCarthy is you have a strong running game and you balance it out with his ability to take advantage of play action, to thread the needle, to throw with anticipation, burn teams over the middle. I really think he could be a devastating player in that way. Do I think he is ready to become a top tier NFL quarterback right now? I think there's a lot of projection. He doesn't throw outside the numbers enough with the type of production that I think the top guys do, and that's what I kind of look for. That's where these guys differentiate themselves. But I think he can. I
Mhm.
just think it's about like that's where I say sample size. Like he just doesn't have the same number of snaps and dropbacks as these other guys. And I think in a different system he would. So I think he's going early. I would not be unhappy if the Giants took him and said this is the guy we're developing because I think he's going to be a fine NFL player.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. My eyes are fully set right now on Caleb Williams, Drake May, but if I have to adjust them, JJ McCarthy is the guy who I really like.
All right. Do you have
So
anything else on JJ?
yeah, let's just dive into some of these numbers that we've gone for each guy, but that's really all I have. So again, JJ McCarthy is another player who has really succeeded deep. He has, starting out that deep center, a lot of 6 touchdowns from these guys. He has gone 14 for 18, and that's insane. 393 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Uh, Total deep, so 20 plus, 646 yards, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception, with a 64.9 adjusted completion percentage, 13 big time throws. He had a 95.3 PFF grade deep. Um, Looking outside there, he went 4 for 8 deep outside right, 5 for 11 deep outside left. So go outside the numbers deep, he did pretty well. The numbers might not always line up here. Because some of these came up weird, but to the right, he did have a lot of success overall. He went 8 for 8 in that medium area, 10 to 19, 152 yards and 1 touchdown. He was 5 for 12 to the left side though. So, and only 70 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So he's a little bit different the others guys. He sees, 10 for 12 at 0 to 9 to the right. So really, he was failing more to the left, while guys like Caleb Williams and Drake May were struggling more to the right. But just go down from each level, go back to that 10 to 19, that medium. He had a 93 PFF passer grading. Again, really great. 726 yards, 3 big time throws, 2 interceptions. Short, he had a 64.8. So I think that's the lowest number we've seen in 0 to 9. He had 623 yards, 90.2 adjusted completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. I'm not really sure why that's so low, like passer grade wise. I'm sure there's reasoning for it, but
It's
that's
what I told you.
interesting.
It's
Yeah,
what I told you. It shows up on his film a lot where he's
yeah,
missing guys and easy throws because he's just hurling at 150 miles an hour and he's
yeah.
missing them. Like I mean, he misses layups. Like he takes them, but he misses them. It's a weird dynamic in his game, and I don't know why it is, but it doesn't seem like a technical like a physical flaw. It seems like a coachable flaw.
And know what? To your point there, he has an 81.7 completion percentage, but his adjusted 90.2. So I wonder if there's anything going in there where they're like, yeah, but you're ripping it at this guy outside the numbers and he's dropping it because of that type of thing. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
but because it's almost like a 10% difference. And then finally ended up with behind the line of scrimmage, 139 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, a 76.6 PFF grade. And he had 100% adjusted completion percentage behind the line of scrimmage. So good for him there. Yeah, that's all I really have on this guy. Do you have anything else before we dive into our last?
Nope, not at all. I think he's a great prospect, and he's going to need to go somewhere where he develops. He's going to need a little bit more patience than the other guys because he's young and he needs a lot of developmental work, but he has a tremendous amount of upside.
Yep. Okay. All right. So going to our last guy, I'll introduce him. One of Sal's favorites. Uh,
Yeah,
we have Michael Penix. He is a 6-year senior out of Washington, 6'3", 213 pounds. He was a 3-star recruit. He actually is a transfer from Indiana. In high school he played baseball and he ran track. Uh, and when he was at Indiana, he was actually a very good player. He just dealt with some injuries, and we'll go into that. But you know, prior to his injury in 2021, where he hurt his shoulder, he um he led the Big Ten in or passing yards and touchdowns, or maybe it was ACL, whatever it was. But um he had injuries there where he tore his ACL, he hurt his clavicle, he tore his ACL again, he got a shoulder injury. He's all this, and then he transfers to Washington, where he's, knock on wood, been able to stay healthy and has shown a lot of success. And that started last year in 2022. Last year he had a 64.6 completion percentage. He threw for 4,641 passing yards, which I'm pretty sure led to all of FBS. He had 31 passing touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 92 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, only 2 fumbles. You heard like everybody else is 6, 7. JJ McCarthy was all the way up at 9. Much better this year, by the way. He's much lower for anybody can count. But 87.9 PFF grade last year, 88.1 passing grade, 54 rushing grades. So has not shown as much rusher as some of these other guys. And then he had a 61.8 PFF grade under pressure, which was 25th in the country. So again, very, very good considering. Not a guy who sees a ton of pressure. He has really good protection there at Washington, but has done a good job at avoiding sacks and doing well under pressure. But why don't you tell us more about your guy here, Michael Penix, Sal?
Michael Penix has been my guy for 2 years. Another shout out to my friends at MLK Crew who I was pounding the table for this guy last year. They said I was out of my mind, and they were like, the guy from Indiana. I was like, yes, he's good. No, he's not good. Yes, he's good. Now they're like, yeah, you're right, he's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's fucking great, is what he is. He's older. I mean, the only reason he's number 5 on this list and not number 2, 3, or maybe even number 2 is his age and his injury history. Because when it comes to quarterback play, I think there's a strong argument to be made that Michael Penix Jr. right now is the best quarterback in this class. Like in terms of pure on-field play, he is the most complete quarterback in this class. Now he's not a runner. He doesn't have the running ability that the other guys do. I think if there's a knock on his game, that's it, right? And I think that might be a function of just his lower body injuries over the years, and he's adapted. He's not going to run, but he can scramble to get out of trouble. What he does do, though, which is incredible, is that he uses his legs to avoid sacks. He's always looking down the field to throw. He manipulates the pocket. I want to read off some of his numbers to you, the 2023 numbers. Passing grade 91.3. His intermediate passing grade 91.5. His deep passing grade 93.6. The no pressure grade 92.9. The pressure grade 63.8. Still respectable. But listen to these numbers. Adjusted completion percentage 78.4%. Average depth of target 11 yards. Big time throw rate 6.1%. Turnover worthy play rate 1.1%. His pressure to sack rate. And remember, I said 20% is what you're looking for, And the best we had until now was 18% from J.J. McCarthy. Michael Penix Jr.'s pressure to sack conversion rate, 7.7%. And this is not a fluke. If you go back in his history, and I pulled up those numbers too, going back all the way to Indiana, here were his pressure to sack conversion rates. This year, 7.7%. In 2022, with all that production, all those big time throws, you know what his pressure to sack conversion rate was? 3.2%. His highest number ever was 12.1% in Indiana in 21. And then he had numbers of 7.4, 2.6, and I think those are the numbers at his time there. He does not take sacks, and he does not turn the ball over very much. Yet he produces a huge number of big-time throws and explosive plays. When you watch him on film, I mean, I think what pops off right away is this guy's arm is a freaking howitzer. Like he
Yeah.
just has a cannon. Like, and he has funky mechanics. Like we're talking about,
Yeah.
JJ McCarthy has like these like sort of classical mechanics with like the short release with a lot of velocity. Same thing for Drake
Yep.
Maye. This guy's release looks. I mean, he looks kind of like he's torquing his whole body, and he holds the ball kind of sideways and kind of
It's a
half sidearm.
3-4 like sidearm, like
Yeah, it looks like exactly. It looks like a middle inning reliever in baseball.
yeah.
Like
That's my
you
baseball
know,
background. So
yeah. So he throws the ball like he's about to throw a baseball. Like he has that weird kind of delivery, but he gets torque on the damn thing, and he gets a lot of velocity out of it. And I think if people try to coach that out of him, they're going to ruin him because that's just the way he throws the football. Like it's not a problem. It's just his style. But the ball fires out of his hand. He makes throws, Monty, that are insane. Like outside the numbers, down the field. He reads defenses beautifully, and he makes incredible throws, like in deep into coverage where the ball's just sailing. Like he goes from one hash mark to the other sideline on a freaking rope, 30 yards down the field. He beats safeties who are rushing over; they can't get to the ball. That's all the physical talent. Like he has probably the most powerful arm of the top guys in the class. That's saying a lot.
yeah.
But what makes him special is really it's up here. It's between the ears, and I think that comes from being an experienced quarterback. I mean, I mentioned the pressure to sack rate. He knows how to. He can sense pressure. He knows how to avoid it. He sidesteps it, and he throws the ball. He doesn't take sacks. But if you watch his film, and I know I think I watched 4 of his games. What he does better than anybody in this class is he controls safeties. He completely controls them. I don't know if you paid attention to that when you were watching
Yeah.
him, but
I After you mentioned it, I was looking for it.
it's so noticeable. Like when you really start noticing, when you start seeing it, like he does it every play where he holds safeties. Like he knows that he's going to his left or his right, and he'll hold the safety the other way as long as he possibly can. And the defense does not get a read on where he's going with his eyes, and then he just quickly snaps his head and snaps the ball, and it's gone. And there's no chance for that deep safety to help. And
Yep.
essentially, he creates one-on-one matchups with his eyes constantly, constantly. He does not allow the deep safety to help because they have no idea where he's going with the ball. He is an advanced passer. He's the most advanced passer in this class, in my opinion. Although the guy we'll get to at the top of our list in the 6 to 10 category might be making a run for that.
Yep.
But this is an experienced quarterback with a howitzer of an arm. He has accuracy. He doesn't take sacks. He doesn't turn the ball over. He produces big time throws. He controls defenses. He's cerebral. He knows how to read defenses. He goes through progressions. He beats zone. He beats man. I don't have any real criticisms of Michael Penix Jr.'s game, except for maybe the nitpicking that he's not a running quarterback. He can scramble and get out of trouble, but he's not a guy who's going to threaten you with his legs. And I think that, for certain offenses, that's a problem. Unfortunately, for our offense, that's a problem. I think the way Brian Dable wants to run an offense involves a quarterback who can threaten with his legs at least a little bit more than what we see from Michael Penix. I'm not saying he can't do it, but it's certainly not a staple of his game. And when he does run, you don't see him outrunning guys. You just kind of see him, take an easy lane where he can scramble and get a first down, and
Yep.
then he quickly gets out of bounds. He's not trying to do anything with his legs. He's just trying to get out of trouble, which I think is smart. He lives to play another day, another
Mm.
down. But as you can tell, I love this guy. I've been watching him for 2 years. He's resurrected his career, and he's fantastic. He's got to go to a pro style offense, man. He's got to go to a vertical offense. He's got to go to Minnesota or an Arian style offense where he's just taking the snap, taking 3 steps back and slinging the ball down the field.
He's from Tampa.
I mean, this is like that's where this guy belongs, isn't it? Because I would love to see him be on Minnesota. And I've said this a
Yeah,
lot of times, like a thousand times. Like just put him on that team
that
with
line,
just
those wide receivers.
with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, like running down the field. This guy would absolutely light up the scoreboard. But I know I went on and on. Give me your thoughts on Michael Penix.
Yeah, so I like Michael Penix. I don't like Michael Penix as much as you like Michael Penix, but I am a
That's hard to
big
do.
fan. Yeah. So I'll get into my positives first. So, I mean, like, one thing I was saying to you, I mean, the dude can spin it. When you say that about, like, a quarterback, like, he should be next to that in the dictionary, like, between, like, how hard he throws it and just, like, that torque he puts on the ball from that, like, throw angle, he spins
It's
the
crazy.
hell out of that football.
It's like, how did he get that much like velocity with that weird angle? But he does it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, his confidence is insane, man. He is always the most confident player on that football field, no matter who he's playing. Whether it's him rapping on the sideline, freestyling about how he's gonna get on the field, which actually happened, and have a comeback, and then he did
Against
it.
against Oregon. Yeah.
Yep. His confidence to throw the ball anywhere on the field. He has so much confidence in his arm, and rightfully so, because he can put that ball anywhere on the field and he fucking knows it. That said, he's got a great deep ball. I noticed what you were talking about with manipulating safeties. I see him doing it with his eyes and holding them. I see him doing it with pump fakes. That's something which fair. I think initially read as he was not very much of an anticipatory thrower, and he can be at times. I definitely seen him, and then some of the deep ones he's not. And it is because it's two things here. It's he's doing that. He's doing it for a reason. He's trying to hold off safeties and make plays for himself. And he has a really good offensive line, a
Yep.
very good offensive line in college. He is. I had it pulled up. Uh, he has a 23.2% he is pressured on in college, which is the 8th lowest in all of college football. He
All
is
the other guys you've gone over are in the 30s.
he and he
Yeah.
and he's back there, and he's trying to make plays. So I definitely see him at times, like, just trusting his arm that if he holds in there for a little bit longer, the line holds up, he knows he can rip that ball in there and he can try to see if he can pull a safety off of a guy. So I don't know if he'll be able to pull that off in the NFL as much because he's not going to get as much time as he gets in college. But no, his time to throw is good. It's not like that's something that he's like has a 3+ second time to throw. It's just something I've noticed with that he does a lot. He manipulates the pocket well. He navigates it. I think he kind of has heavy feet. He's not a very like he doesn't look athletic at all when I see him play, but he moves well. He finds his opportunities. He moves the pocket. But he is very good at working with the athleticism he has. Um, he works very well within the system. He's not a guy who starts working off script and doing special things. He stays in a pocket and works within what they want him doing. Washington has a weird system. They run some weird plays with a lot of deep concepts, but he does a really good job in it. And another thing I had, he avoids bad plays. I see him throw the ball away a lot. He's very good at not making stupid plays. I'm gonna get into the negatives a little bit because I do have some negatives for him. One thing I mentioned to you, and I mentioned it to one earlier, is you know, again, there's different types of accuracies. Guys who don't hit the door, there are guys who hit the door, the guys who hit the doorknob, and there's guys who hit the keyhole. A lot of him, especially in the lot of deep throws, I see him as hit the door guy. I don't see
Yep.
him putting the ball in the perfect spot, and he's been very lucky to have 3 guys who are gonna get drafted probably in the first 2 days of the draft. He has really talented wide receivers who I don't wanna say the word bailed out, but they consistently make plays that not all other receivers would make. They shouldn't it's not that they shouldn't be expected. They get 2 hands on and everything, but they consistently make these plays, and I just don't see them in the right spot. If you have a Wandale Robinson who has historically short arms, I don't know if he can make a play like some of these guys can. But with big targets, you think of like Eli in his younger years where he really benefited from having a Plexco, a Jeremy Shockey, a Monty Toomer who were good receivers with a big catch radius. He really uses that to his advantage. Stay. Do you have anything on that?
No, I think that's all fair. I would not push back, but I would say that I think that without Michael Penix Jr., are we really talking about, O'Dunes, McMillan, and Polk the way we are now?
Mm,
I
yeah.
think I think they're talented. I'm not taking anything away from them. O'Dunes probably we would, but the other guys, I'm not sure because I think that I think it's a nice symbiotic relationship where the quarterback makes these receivers and they make him.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
agree.
the, the only thing I would say about the accuracy, which I don't disagree with you. He doesn't place it perfectly, but I do think, like you said, that it's a function of I think the way he dictates the tempo of the play, where he's holding the
Mm,
safety and he's essentially assuring man coverage. I think his general philosophy is establish that there's going to be man coverage on his target and not let the safety get there, and then just throw the ball with a lot of velocity and trust his receiver to go get it. I think that's sort of his game. And that's why he's not for every system.
yep.
Um, but there are systems that are designed for a guy like that.
Yep. So the last two things I have, one, I tried writing it off at first because everybody at quarterback runs into it, but I just kept seeing it. He overthrows his wide receivers a decent bit. He does not have a consistent touch on his deep balls. He has a howitzer of an arm and tends to put it too far out in front of these guys more often than I'd like to see. It's not like a huge problem, but it happens consistent enough. Did you see that?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely plays where over the middle, specifically over the middle. I'm assuming you mean right, where he
Just
just
deep, like 20
yeah
yards plus.
yeah he'll sling it and they can't catch it because they can't catch
Yeah.
up with it. And I think there is that issue, and there's sort of you got to put more touch on the ball for sure.
Yeah.
And he could
Um
because he has the arm to. He definitely could.
It's it be I bet what I'm thinking is probably something that comes with that weird release where it's hard to get consistency on his touch where he's coming from, where he just does not have a standard release. So I think that plays into it a little bit.
Maybe, yeah.
Um, Last thing I have, and you touched on it, but I just want to say with me is his athleticism issues. I don't like quarterbacks like that. I'm so burned by them with how they've been recently. Like every single quarterback that seems to lack athleticism fails in the league. And I'm just at this point, no matter how good they are, how much I like them, I'm just like, if I don't think you have the ability to extend plays, I just would rather miss on you. I'd be okay missing on you, type of thing. I think
Yeah.
in the right situation, he's good. Like, I think he succeed, but I really would not want to bring him to a situation like here where he has to play behind this line. And like, yeah, he's great at avoiding sacks, but like he's great at not making stupid plays. But if he's just getting rid of the football and dumping it off every single time, he's just Daniel Jones who can throw the ball really far, but we can't let him do it. Like, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean?
I think he definitely needs structure.
Mhm.
And I think that's a fair point. Again, he's not for every system, but in the right, like he's kind of the opposite of the top two guys we talked about, right? Like there's no, I don't really personally believe there's any such thing as a situation proof quarterback. I think you and I differ a little bit on that. I don't think it does. I don't think it really exists. Um, but there are guys who are close to that. And I think and Drake were viewed as sort of being pretty close to that, although they're not quite there.
Yeah. I see
This
more
guy's
like Trevor Lawrence's of the world that are more like that, in my opinion.
Urban Meyer happened,
And he survived
so
them.
well, eventually, yeah. But I would say Michael Penix is the opposite spectrum, end of the spectrum there. Like he's situation dependent. You got to be very careful. The team that takes him has to have that structure. I keep saying Minnesota because they have the offensive line. They have that top elite left tackle. They have a solid line all around. They've got the receivers. they've got this infrastructure to say, just take the ball and use your God-given talent to get to distribute it to our receivers. And we're gonna put up, video game stats with you. And I really feel like that's the perfect landing spot for him is Minnesota. Maybe Seattle, maybe Tampa. These are teams where I think he would do very well. They are all teams that have solid lines and have really good receiving cores that
Yep.
that can basically stretch the field. It's not just having good receivers, but stretch the field kind of guys. And that's where he thrives. Our offense is, it's not there. Certainly the line isn't there outside of Andrew Thomas. And in terms of our receiving depth, they've decided to build a line that's built more, a receiving room that's built more on the short, intermediate separation type guys, as opposed to guys who are field stretchers outside of Jalen Hyatt. Now, Michael Penix and Jalen Hyatt could be fun if we could block for him. But
Mhm.
again, I think that he may not be a perfect fit here. I'm not going to be upset if the Giants took him. I'd be happy, but then I would
Yeah.
expect Joe Shea to turn around and build like that the proper kind of line where you just give him just enough time where he can dissect defenses because you can't ask him to win with his legs. That's just not his game.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not a fan of but I know there are people who would go like Olufashano or Joe Alt. If you were gonna do something like that, maybe he could be an option to come back in the first four once you add that. Personally, not the route I'd go, but maybe a thought for the people who do want to go down that route.
Yeah, I mean that's again. I think Michael Penix Jr., as good as he is not going before. I'd be shocked if he went before pick 20. You
Yeah,
know,
I agree. I think
I think
he's.
he's in that 20 to 30 range. I think
I could even see him going early day too, but we'll
it, it,
see,
he certainly
especially with
could just because
injuries.
of age and injuries. Yeah, and not
Yep.
because of not because of talent and production, but just because age and injuries. I think that's his range. Maybe the 20 to 40 range is a better descriptor of where he
Yeah.
might land. A team. I think he's the kind of candidate that a team would trade up to come get at the back end of round one. I think that's kind of like the sweet spot for a guy like him. And
And
again,
then
it's
just
got to be
quarterback
the
depth too. A lot of
right.
quarterbacks we're talking about.
Right, and I think this is a guy where I don't wanna see him drafted by a team that's gonna say to him, "Here, just do everything," like, "Just go
Yep.
run around." That's not his game. His game is give him a little structure, and he can be an absolute tactician. He has unique and rare talent if you give him structure. But if you don't give him structure, I do think he'll exploit some of his deficiencies, and so he's somebody that has to go to the right spot. Unfortunately for us, I'm not sure where that's us right now.
Yep, I agree. So I'll go in the last few things here and go down, some of his depth numbers. So, you kind of touched on some of them, but deep, he has 1,086 yards, 9 touchdowns for a 93.6 passer rating with a 52.3 adjusted completion percentage, 47.7 true. So right around where you expect to be. But 5 interceptions, which isn't the best, but not the worst. He has it's pretty even across the board. He has 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions out to the top left. He has 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for 433 yards, 11 for 22, right up the middle. And then he has 2 touchdowns and one interception out to the right. So those interceptions are kind of spread evenly as well as, most touchdowns in the middle, but he spread it pretty out. And then medium, 10-19, as you said, a 91.5 rating in that area. Still has 863 yards. That's what a lot of people have deep. 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Oh, it also mentioned he had 20 big time throws deep. He has one big time throw, then medium 10-19. And then short 80 completion, 80 PFF grade, really good. 885 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a 87.8 completion percentage. I think it was 75.3 for medium if I didn't mention that. And then finally, behind the line of scrimmage, 371 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 95.8 adjusted completion percentage. So he really succeeds at every single level. And oddly enough, he's great, but also has some weirdness at that very deep level. And I think that's some of the goes in a little bit of his touch on that. But
That's
really,
fair.
really good player. Um, really just good passer of the football and he's a good and he, a guy who's just advanced. I mean, oh, one thing I wanted to mention before we totally move off this and close out the show. You mentioned you're talking about how his smarts and his leadership. I heard something from his coach over there at Washington, who he followed over Indiana, and he said when he followed him over there, it was like having another coach on the roster when he was trying to like set up. He was just so complimentary of his intelligence and what he did to help set their program there and set up the offense because of how much he knew about it from his time there in
He's a
Indiana.
leader. Yeah, you can tell watching him on Saturdays. He's a leader, and that team looks to him for leadership on both sides of the ball. You see it. It's weird to see that, but he's the undisputed leader of that football team, and I think he's just got that kind of personality. Wherever he goes, he eventually will become the alpha, the leader, and I think you want that in your quarterback. The whole thing where he's freestyling against, on the sideline, Oregon takes a lead and it's a huge game. It's the biggest game of his career, and he's just hanging out. He's keeping his teammates loose, and then he just comes out. What does he do? He throws like 3 passes and drives it for a touchdown. Like just boom, boom,
Yep.
boom, and it's over. And he just like ends the game and just walks off the field. It just the guy's an assassin. And I think a lot of this is just all the years of experience, and you're seeing it, right? You're seeing it develop into a quarterback. This is how it used to be. Guys were in college playing for 4+ years, 5 years in college before they came to the NFL. That doesn't happen anymore because of COVID. We're going to see guys like that. Michael Penix is just the first one that we're reviewing, and he's the only one that made our top five. But there are guys coming up in the second episode of this, the 6 to 10 range, who are all in this category.
Yeah.
Guys who've been in college
100%.
for a long time, who have taken advantage of those extra years to develop into more refined quarterbacks and are ready to play in the NFL today. But I think with that, we should probably close it out. We're a little over 2 hours and 11 minutes here. This
Yeah.
is probably our longest pod, but I think this one was 100% worth it because we wanted to give our loyal listeners, our viewers, a lot to digest when it comes to the quarterback class. You guys wanted an episode about quarterbacks. We didn't want to just say we like this guy. We wanted to go in depth into why we like these guys, the data behind it, the film review behind it, all of it, the pros, the cons, the draft expectations, the fits. I think it's worth going into if you're going to do this. So we appreciate you guys sticking with us. That's episode 1 of the quarterback class. Episode, what are we on? 11?
11.
Yeah, of our pod. It's been so much fun. We got one more to go with quarterbacks. It's coming up next week. We're going to do quarterbacks 6 through 10. We hope you pay attention to that one as well. Give us feedback as always. I'm Sal at Queens_guy on Twitter /X. Monty is at Monte Cristo at MONTECRI5TO. Or you can just reach us at He's a Giant Pod. Please review us, leave us 5 stars, the whole bit. Subscribe, give us feedback. We appreciate it. And find us on Spaces and Twitter if you want. But if that's all I got, Monty, you have any closing thoughts?
Yes. Last couple things before we get out of here. I know this went long, but you know, if we didn't mention your guy in these first 5, these we kind of just picked out our first 5. We didn't even start watching tape on the next guy. It takes a lot of our time. So very well, your guy could end up in our final ranks, end up ahead of these guys. We're
I
really
know who you're talking to. Don't be intimidated by him.
shut out Obed. But no, but also our number 6 that I know we're gonna talk about, I'm a big fan of, and I
Yeah.
think I
So
might end up having higher
five,
here.
yeah, 5 and 6 was a little bit of a debate about who would
Yeah.
go 5 because they're so similar and like in terms of like where we value them for slightly different reasons. So we trust us, guys. Some of your favorite players are coming up, and that's just how good this damn class is. Like that, they're the guys who are really good, legitimate NFL starters at the next level very quickly can't even crack the top 5 of this class in our mind, and it's just a testament to the class.
Yep. And then the one other thing I wanted to mention, I just wanted to give 3 quick games for people to watch because it's a really good quarterback weekend. Michigan, Penn State. You finally get to see JJ McCarthy face a real defense, something really hasn't done this year. That's going to be huge for the JJ McCarthy evaluation at the 12 o'clock game. You have Washington versus Utah. So you have Mike Penix versus one of the best defenses in the country in Utah. That's at 3:30. So another really good game. Then finish out your night with Oregon versus USC, and you have Caleb Williams versus Bo Nix, 2 very highly touted prospects in this draft. Really, really good players. So all games to watch. Definitely a good weekend. They're not all on at the same time like last week. It'll be a good day of watching college football. But no, that is all I have now. So
All right. All right. Let's call it a night. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you next week.
all right. See you guys. Go Giants.
Go Giants.